Dad, I'm your matchmaker. 5 words that changed everything for James Wilson that fateful evening. If you're wondering how a blind date turned into the most unexpected family reunion, stay with me until the end. This story might just change how you see relationships forever. If you find yourself moved by James and Lily's journey, please consider hitting that like button and subscribing to our channel for more heartfelt stories that remind us what truly matters in life. James adjusted his tie for the 5th time, checking his reflection in the rearview mirror of his sedan. At 42, he hadn't been on a proper date in nearly 3 years. His palms were sweaty, and the collar of his shirt suddenly felt too tight. Dating at his age was hard enough, but as a single father who had raised his daughter Lily alone since she was 7, it felt nearly impossible. "This is ridiculous," he muttered to himself, running a hand through his salt and pepper hair. The dating app had been Lily's idea. Now 21 and in her 3rd year of college, she had become increasingly concerned about her father's solitary life. "Dad, you can't just work and watch old movies with me when I visit. You need someone special in your life," she had insisted during her last break from university. The restaurant, an upscale Italian place downtown, glowed warmly against the autumn evening. James took a deep breath and stepped out of his car, clutching the single rose he'd brought, too cliché, perhaps, but he was rusty at this whole romance thing. According to the app, his date, Catherine, 39, art gallery curator, would be wearing a blue dress and sitting at a corner table. James had shared very little about himself on his profile, just the basics: widower, father, architect. Lily had helped him select photos that didn't make him look like a boring dad, as she had tactfully put it. The maitre d' led James through the dimly lit restaurant. His heart pounded as they approached the corner table. And then he saw her, not his date, but Lily, his daughter, sitting at a nearby table with a group of friends. She hadn't mentioned being in town this weekend. Their eyes met across the room. Lily's expression shifted from surprise to something else. Was that guilt? Before James could process this coincidence, the maitre d' stopped at a table where a woman sat alone, her back to him. She wore a blue dress, just as described. "Your table, sir," the maitre d' said with a slight bow. The woman turned around, and James froze. It wasn't Catherine. It was Melissa, his late wife's best friend, someone he'd known for years but hadn't seen in nearly 2. She looked equally shocked. "James?" Melissa's voice was barely audible over the ambient restaurant noise. "Melissa? I don't understand. I'm supposed to be meeting someone named Catherine." Before Melissa could respond, James felt a presence beside him. Lily stood there, her expression a mixture of nervousness and determination. "Dad, I'm your matchmaker," she said quietly. "There is no Catherine." James couldn't believe what he was hearing. "You, what?" "Maybe we should all sit down," Melissa suggested gently, her cheeks flushed with embarrassment. As James took a seat, his mind raced. Lily pulled up a chair from a nearby empty table. "I'm sorry for the deception, Dad," Lily began, her voice trembling slightly. "But I've watched you spend the last 14 years alone, putting your life on hold to raise me. You've never even looked at another woman since Mom died." James felt a lump forming in his throat. "Lily, that was my choice. I wanted to be there for you." "I know, Dad. And you are, the best father anyone could ask for. But I'm grown now, and you deserve happiness too." Lily reached across the table and took Melissa's hand. "And Aunt Mel has been alone too long as well." Melissa's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "I had no idea about any of this until an hour ago, James. Lily called me and asked me to meet her here. She said it was urgent." James looked between the 2 women, his emotions a tangled mess. Anger at the deception, confusion about the situation, and something else he couldn't quite name when he looked at Melissa, something that had been dormant for a very long time. "I should go," he said, standing abruptly. "This isn't, I can't." Dad, please, Lily pleaded. Just hear me out. Remember when Mom was sick, at the end? James sat back down heavily. Those final days with Sarah had been the most painful of his life. She made me promise something, Lily continued. I was only 7, but I remember it clearly. She made me promise to take care of you, to make sure you found happiness again someday. She asked me to look after both of you, Melissa added softly. I've tried, James. But you always kept everyone at arm's length. James stared at the rose he still clutched in his hand, its petals slightly crushed from his tight grip. Sarah never told me any of this. She knew you'd refuse, Lily said. She knew you'd say you were fine on your own. The waiter approached, looking uncertain about the tense tableau before him. Would you like to order drinks? 3 glasses of the house red, please, Melissa said decisively, giving the waiter a reassuring smile. After he left, an uncomfortable silence fell over the table. James finally broke it. So this whole dating app thing was a setup from the beginning? Lily nodded, looking both guilty and defiant. I created the profile for you, and I've been the one messaging as Catherine. I knew you'd never agree to be set up with someone you knew, especially not Aunt Mel. Why especially not me? Melissa asked, looking hurt. James couldn't meet her eyes. Because you were Sarah's best friend. Because it would feel like betraying her, Melissa finished for him. James, it's been 14 years. Sarah wouldn't want this for you, this half-life you've been living. The waiter returned with their wine. James took a long sip, needing the liquid courage. I should be furious with you, he said to Lily. This manipulation, the lies. Are you? Lily asked, her voice small. James looked at his daughter, really looked at her. She had Sarah's eyes, the same determined set to her jaw. She had grown into a remarkable young woman while he wasn't looking, somehow balancing compassion with a fierce protectiveness that reminded him so much of her mother. No, he admitted finally. I'm not furious. I don't know what I am. Ambushed? Melissa suggested with a tentative smile. Despite himself, James laughed. It was a rusty sound, unpracticed. Definitely ambushed. Lily visibly relaxed. Dad, I'm going to go back to my friends now. You two should have dinner, talk. Really talk, for the first time in years. She stood and kissed her father's cheek. No pressure, no expectations. Just 2 old friends catching up. As Lily walked away, James turned to Melissa. In the candlelight, he noticed the fine lines around her eyes that hadn't been there before, the streak of silver in her dark hair. She had aged, as he had, but there was still something luminous about her. I'm sorry about all this, he said. You must feel so uncomfortable. Melissa took a sip of her wine. Actually, I've had a crush on you since college, James Wilson. Even before you met Sarah. James nearly choked on his wine. What? But you and Sarah were inseparable. You were her maid of honor at our wedding. And I was genuinely happy for both of you, Melissa said. Sarah was my best friend, and you were perfect together. I buried those feelings a long time ago. And now? James asked, his heart racing for an entirely different reason than when he'd entered the restaurant. Now I'm a 41-year-old woman who's been set up on a blind date by her goddaughter, Melissa said with a wry smile. And I'm sitting across from a man I've known for half my life but haven't really talked to in years. I'd like to change that, if you would. James finally handed her the rose he'd been clutching all this time. I think I'd like that too. 6 months later, James stood in his kitchen, making Sunday breakfast. The sound of laughter drifted in from the living room where Melissa and Lily were looking through old photo albums. Dad, you have to see this one. Lily called. It's you and Aunt Mel at my 5th birthday party. You're both covered in cake frosting. James smiled as he flipped the pancakes. So much had changed since that night at the restaurant. He and Melissa had started slowly, coffee dates, long walks, phone calls that stretched late into the night. They had 14 years to catch up on, after all. What surprised him most wasn't falling in love again, it was how natural it felt, how right. Melissa had always been there, a constant in his life even when they drifted apart. She knew his history, his pain, his joy. She had loved Sarah too, and understood what that loss had meant to him and Lily. Need any help in there? Melissa appeared in the doorway, her hair tousled, wearing one of his old t-shirts. She had stayed over more and more frequently lately. I've got it under control, he assured her, leaning in for a quick kiss. Dad's actually become a decent cook, Lily commented, entering the kitchen and hopping onto a counter stool. A miracle that only took 14 years to manifest. Necessity is the mother of invention, James quipped, sliding a plate of pancakes toward his daughter. As they ate breakfast together, James marveled at how his life had transformed. The house that had felt too empty for so long now rang with conversation and laughter again. I have something to tell you both, Lily announced, setting down her fork. I've been offered an internship in Chicago for the summer. That's wonderful, honey. James exclaimed, though he felt a twinge at the thought of her being so far away. It's an amazing opportunity, Melissa agreed. Though we'll miss you terribly. Lily smiled mischievously. Well, I was thinking, with me gone for 3 months, maybe you two might want to, I don't know, take the next step. Melissa practically lives here already. James and Melissa exchanged glances. They hadn't discussed moving in together officially, though the thought had crossed his mind more than once. Are you trying to play matchmaker again? James asked his daughter, raising an eyebrow. It worked out pretty well the first time, didn't it? Lily countered. Later that evening, after Lily had gone back to her dorm, James and Melissa sat on the porch swing, watching the stars emerge in the twilight sky. She's not subtle, is she? Melissa said, nestling against James's shoulder. Gets that from her mother, James replied, wrapping an arm around her. Sarah was always a planner, always 3 steps ahead of everyone else. Do you think she somehow planned this too? Us? Melissa asked softly. James was quiet for a moment, considering. I don't know about that. But I think she'd approve. She'd want both of us to be happy. And are you? Happy? Melissa tilted her face up to his. James looked into her eyes, seeing the future he never thought he'd have again reflected there. More than I ever thought possible. Move in with me, Mel. Not because Lily suggested it, but because I can't imagine my life without you in it anymore. Melissa's answer was a kiss that held all the promise of new beginnings and the comfort of shared history. 1 year to the day after that fateful blind date, James found himself back at the same restaurant, at the same corner table. This time, there was no deception, no manipulation, just a reservation he'd made weeks in advance. Melissa sat across from him, radiant in a blue dress that reminded him of their first real date. Lily was away at graduate school now, pursuing her dreams with the same determination she'd shown in pursuing happiness for her father. Happy anniversary, James said, raising his glass to Melissa. To unexpected setups, she replied with a smile. After dinner, as they strolled through the park where they'd had so many of their early dates, James felt the weight of the small box in his pocket. He'd been carrying it for weeks, waiting for the perfect moment. They stopped by the fountain, its waters catching the moonlight in dancing ripples. James took both of Melissa's hands in his. I never thought I'd get a second chance at love, he began, his voice thick with emotion. For years, I convinced myself that I was complete on my own, that Lily was all I needed. I was wrong. Melissa squeezed his hands, her eyes shining. You and Lily conspired to ambush me that night, James continued with a smile, and it was the best ambush of my life. You helped me remember what it feels like to truly live again, not just exist. He lowered himself to one knee, drawing the ring box from his pocket. Melissa gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. Melissa Bennett, would you do me the extraordinary honor of becoming my wife? Of continuing this beautiful ambush for the rest of our lives? Yes, she whispered through happy tears. 1,000 times yes. As he slipped the ring onto her finger, James felt his phone buzz in his pocket. After Melissa pulled him to his feet and into a deep kiss, he checked the message. It was from Lily. Did she say yes? Don't leave your daughter in suspense. James laughed and showed the message to Melissa, who was admiring her ring in the moonlight. Should we call her? Melissa asked. In a minute, James replied, pulling his new fiancée close. First, I want to savor this moment with just you. As they stood embracing by the fountain, James reflected on the journey that had brought them here. From the depths of grief to the heights of unexpected joy, from a blind date setup to a proposal, life had come full circle in the most beautiful way. Later that night, as they video-called Lily to share their news, her delighted squeal echoed through the phone. I knew it. I knew you two were perfect for each other. You were right, James admitted. Your matchmaking skills are unparalleled. Does this mean I get to plan the wedding? Lily asked eagerly. James and Melissa exchanged amused glances. Within reason, Melissa cautioned. After they hung up, James pulled Melissa close on the couch. Are you ready for a lifetime with the Wilson family? We come with a very determined daughter who thinks she knows what's best for everyone. I wouldn't have it any other way, Melissa replied, resting her head on his shoulder. Some people spend their whole lives looking for their perfect match. I'm just lucky that mine came with a very persistent matchmaker. As they drifted off to sleep that night, James thought about all the twists and turns that had led to this moment. He thought about Sarah, about the promise Lily had kept, about second chances and new beginnings. Most of all, he thought about how sometimes the greatest love stories don't begin with love at first sight, but with the courage to open your heart again when you thought it was closed forever. And somewhere, he liked to think, Sarah was smiling. If this story touched your heart, please don't forget to like and subscribe for more content that celebrates the unexpected journeys of life and love. Remember that sometimes the most beautiful chapters of our lives begin when we least expect them, and that it's never too late for a new beginning.